Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining me at the table. I need to start off by correcting myself for something I said last week. Corrie ten Boom was not a quadriplegic. Corrie ten Boom was a Dutch watchmaker, and she, along with her father, helped many Jews escape the Holocaust. She has a three-part name, Corrie ten Boom, and she was also very inspirational, but it was Johnny Erickson Tata, that I was trying to think of, who's a quadriplegic, and through her struggle, she has been used by God to inspire so many people. So I apologize to both Corrie ten Boom's family, as she has now passed on, and I apologize to I almost said it again, Johnny Erickson Tata, for getting her name wrong. Okay, with that, I want to start off tonight by asking you, do you watch football? If you don't, that's okay. If you watch football, then you probably know the name Antonio Brown. If you don't know the name Antonio Brown, let me explain a little bit about who he is. For the first time in the history of football, at least what people think anyway, this person has three different jerseys by three different teams, all on the discount rack, all at one time. Typically, when a football player moves from team to team, their old jerseys will go on a discount rack and be sold at really low price because they're no longer with that same team. He went from the Steelers to the Raiders to the Patriots within a matter of a month or two, maybe a couple months. I don't remember for sure. But anyway, it's a very big trend that we see in sports these days. In football, in baseball, basketball. Everybody probably knows what happened with LeBron James when he decided he wanted to go to the Miami Heat because he wanted to win a championship. Broke the hearts of the people in Cleveland. But of course, he did come back and win a championship for the city of Cleveland. Thank you, LeBron James. I'm a big Cleveland fan. What can I say? But anyway, isn't it interesting how years ago, if you played on a football team, you probably retired from that football team. Terry Bradshaw, Lynn Swann, Franco Harris for the Steelers, Jim Brown, Otto Graham, Brian Sipe, Bernie Kosar, Clay Matthews for the Browns. They played for the same team their entire career, and they did not leave. But these days, these players with free agency, they're chasing after more money. They're chasing after championship rings. They're chasing after so many things, and they just don't stick with the team they're with. You know what? That's the way it works. That's the way it is. So be it. We don't have to like it, but they do it. It's always sad when you see one of your favorite players switch teams, but it's just the way it goes in Major League sports these days. But we need to not get accustomed to what we see in Major League sports, because sometimes we do the same thing. Here's another example. Lately, the real big craze, and it's been, I don't know, maybe 20 years or more since this has been going on, you can lease a car. You own it for 2 to 3 years, maybe even 4 or 5 years. And then when you get tired of it, you take it back, you trade in, you get a new lease on a new car. You constantly have a car payment, you never pay it off. But once you don't like it anymore, you just kind of sweep it under the rug. And then we look at things like grocery stores. It used to be that you would go to the mom and pop store, buy what you need, pay them, keep everything local, right? Then we started seeing Kroger and Walmart, and Walmart devouring Kroger, and Respect still struggling to stay alive as a mom and pop grocery store. But the giant Walmart comes in and lowers their prices, and everybody goes to them because it's cheaper. It's called competition. It's capitalism. And I have no problem with it, but that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. What I'm getting at is we as human beings have become accustomed to switching from one thing to another. When one thing wears out, we go to another. Take a pair of shoes. I remember having the same pair of shoes for, my feet, until my feet grew out of them. And let me tell you, if they had holes, if they were dirty, as long as my feet still fit, I still wore those shoes. Nowadays, somebody might get a pair of shoes dirty and they say, I'll go get another pair. We live in a throwaway society. I oftentimes say we live in a fast food society too. I want it now. But we also live in a throwaway society. Things are made cheaper. They are made more inexpensively, but charged at a higher price still so that the bigger companies can make money. Again, it's capitalism, but we're not here to talk about that. What I am here to talk about is marriage. When someone enters into an agreement with another person to marry them, it's not like there's a free agency period where you can say, I've had enough of this marriage. I'm going to move on to the next one. But isn't that what seems to be going on a lot more these days? It's almost like the enemy has taken real life events in society where people get traded from one football team to the other or one baseball team to another. And they speak to us and they speak in our ears and they say, she's an old model. Go after a younger one. She's all washed up. Go find someone else. He's not the person you married. He's not treating you right. You know what? That other team, they're going to treat you a lot better. So the enemy speaks to us and they speak to the other person. And the next thing you know, people are ignoring their marriage covenant and they're leaving, getting divorced, and moving on to someone else. Not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. God established marriage. And before I go any further, let me tell you what marriage is and what it is not. Marriage, according to God, in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, is a union between a man and a woman. For this, a man shall leave his mother and father and be with his wife, and the two shall become one. Keep that in mind. That's important. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Marriage is not a civil union between a man and a woman. Between a woman and a woman or a man and a man. Marriage is not a piece of paper that the pastor signs and sends into the courthouse and now you're married. Marriage is not what any state in this nation says it is. And the reason I say that is because many states in this nation have said now that marriage is a civil union between a man or a woman and a woman, and they call it a marriage. They simply borrowed the term marriage and applied it to civil unions. According to God, when two people are married, they must come together and become one. And that is how they are married, a man and a woman. It is not anything else. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I don't want to start any arguments. And I feel very strongly about this. But tonight, the topic of marriage is about a covenant, not a contract. That's important. A covenant between a man and a woman. Why do I say covenant? Well, first let me explain what a covenant is. A covenant was established by God between Abraham and himself, also between Noah and himself, and between Adam and Eve. And the one in particular that I want to talk about is the covenant between Abraham and God. In order for a covenant to be established, there has to be cutting of flesh. God took a couple birds and he slayed them open, and Abraham slayed them open, and God passed between them, establishing the covenant with Abraham. Covenant means to cut. So when God established a covenant with Adam and Eve, he cut animal skins and made clothing for them because they saw that they were naked. So he actually cut the animals, and that was part of the covenant, that they shall till the earth, they shall have labor and pregnancy. God cut his rainbow in the sky. You read Genesis, you'll see, I will cut my bow in the sky as a covenant between us to say that I shall never flood the earth again. He cut his bow in the sky. You can literally look back and see where the atmosphere changed during the time of the flood. It wasn't possible for there to be a flood over the entire earth, let alone the fact that it didn't rain very much at all. But God cut the atmosphere, and when he established this covenant that he shall no longer flood the earth again, and made it possible for rainbows to appear, made it so that human beings would not live past 120 years. Now, I know a few people have lived past that, but most people don't live past 120 years. No longer do they live 800, 900 years. But with Abraham, he cut Abraham, circumcised him, as a covenant between him and God, saying, you shall be the seed of many nations. When Jesus died on the cross, he was cut in his hands and his feet hanging on the cross, cut his flesh as a covenant between him and us, between God and us. And then God cuts into our heart the new covenant. Jeremiah 31:31, look it up. He establishes a new covenant in our hearts, cuts away the heart of stone and makes a heart of flesh with him. And we know that Jesus is our covenant. We believe in him. We get to go to heaven. Okay, so that's enough about covenants. When you marry someone, there's no cutting, really. There's other ways of coming together to establish the marriage covenant. In case there are any children watching, I'm going to leave it at that. You all know what I'm talking about. But that coming together, when we break that covenant, we're really, what we're doing is we're ripping apart part of our marriage. When you get a divorce, you are really spiritually ripping apart a part of you, because God has said the two shall become one. Let me give you an analogy. My hand decides, I see that guy over there? I want to be a part of his body. I'm going to cut off my hand and say, hand, okay, go away. You can go be a part of that body. Now I'm left without a hand. A part of me is gone because my hand wanted to be on somebody else's body. What if my eyes decided they wanted to be in somebody else's body? They just cut themselves out and went to someone else. Then I'm left without eyes. I'm now blind. Ears, mouth, anything. What if our body parts could say, I want to be a part of someone else? We can't do that. Oh, sure, I could cut my hand off and a doctor could sew it back on to somebody else. I'm not going to do that, and I don't think many people would. But the idea is, when you get a divorce, you are really doing that in a sense. You're cutting part of yourself away. You're destroying the covenant, and you're putting it towards someone else. That's not a good thing, okay? It's hurtful. It's hurtful not only to the person who wants to leave, but hurtful to the person who doesn't want to get divorced. So before I go any further, let me just say that I know some of you watching me probably have been divorced before. Some of you watching me have been married for years. Some of you watching me have been married again, maybe a third or fourth time even. I don't know. I'm not here to judge anyone. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I'm not here to say do this or do that. I'm just simply giving you the words that God tells me to speak. And God said to me, speak about marriage. And there's a reason that he told me that. But basically, when we break the marriage covenant, it's harmful. We can heal, we can be restored, and God will forgive us. One of the reasons God hates divorce is because it is so hurtful. If you have children, you have a pet, you have a niece, nephew, someone that you love dearly, a brother, sister, if someone was harming them, you'd want to stop that harming, right? And we are God's children. And when one or both people say, you know what, we're done, it's harmful. And God hates that because it harms his children. If you have children in a marriage, they could be harmed. But more than that, it harms the person, the two people, the man and woman who were like this are now like this. You have to tear it apart. So what do if you find yourself in a marriage and you get together, you're like this, and now you're kind of pulling away from one another, and you're just kind of hanging on by a thread? If you're hanging on by a thread, then let's just sew it back together, make it strong again. Or what if you've ripped that thread and you're right here? Does it mean it's over? No. Stretch, pull it back together, sew it back together. It can happen. Okay? It can happen. Not anything we can do. Not me, not you. But God. God can make it happen. I've seen it so many times. I have to give you a little personal testimony here. July 2nd, 1994, 25 years ago, I was married to a woman. And in 18 years, we had 3 wonderful children together. We had, I thought, a good marriage for a long time. Then we started to do this, started the children getting older and getting into new things. And we're kind of like this. And, at least this is where I thought we were. Where she thought we were was over here. Okay. I tried to pull it back together. Tried. Did I try hard enough? No. Ended up getting a divorce. Very painful time in my life. Okay. Very, very painful. And I'm sure it was for her too. And we can look back and we can say all kinds of reasons why we should have stayed together, why we shouldn't have stayed together. We're human beings. We're going to come up with things to make us feel better, right? But the truth is, a marriage covenant was broken, okay? And it was harmful. In time, God healed me, healed her. There was forgiveness. There was a separation, and we both lived separate lives. I got remarried. Still carrying a little bit of the hurt, though. And it was difficult at first. Now, why did I get remarried? Okay. If you're married, why'd you get married? If you are thinking about getting married or you're going to get married, why are you getting married? In all my years as a pastor, I've married, I don't know how many people, a lot of people. In all my years, never, ever did someone come to me and say, we absolutely hate each other. Will you marry us? It just doesn't happen that way. Why do people get married? Because they love one another. Why did I get married again after I was divorced? Because I fell in love with someone, with Tanya. I fell in love with her. We hit it off really well, really quick. Anyway, we got married, okay? And we've been married 5 years now. 5 years on September 20th this past week. But I must say that it was difficult 5 years. There was a lot of really, really great times. And then there were some really bad times too. Almost to the point where I was listening to the voices saying, you know what? You need to move on. She's just not right for you. But I went to God and I said, God, I know this isn't what you want. And I tried to justify it. I said, God, this, and this. And God's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. He's sitting there. Go ahead, Phil. Come on, keep talking. I'm listening to you, Phil. And finally, when I stopped complaining, God said, why'd you marry her? And I thought about all the reasons I married her. God says to me, you made a covenant. I said, yes, sir, I did. God says, go back to her. And I said, I absolutely will. Tanya and I are great today, okay? Just wanted to throw that out there because I know there's a lot of people that may have seen some things that and probably wondered, are they okay? Are they having trouble in their marriage? Okay, look, I'm not going into all the details for her sake, for my sake, and because I don't want to bore all of you with the boring details. But yeah, we had some issues. But we both went to God individually, okay? This is the important thing. We went to God individually and prayed for our marriage. And God brought us both back together and joined us back together. More so than just this. We're like this now. And we're having a great time. And God has put the love back into us that we once had. Why am I telling you this? Because I'm not so I can toot my own horn. Not so I can tell you how wonderful Tanya is, but she is. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that it can happen for you too. If you've been divorced and you didn't want to be, give yourself some time and keep going to God and ask him if he has someone else in mind. If you're divorced and you didn't want to be, or if maybe you did want to be, maybe God wants you to come back together with your wife and or husband or whatever it may be. Reestablish that covenant. He may want you to be with the person that you broke that covenant with. Okay? Maybe he wants you to be alone. I can't tell you what to do. You got to go to God and you got to listen to God. And, I said, God was sitting there going, yeah, go ahead, Phil. Of course, I didn't see God. I didn't hear him saying these things. It was the thoughts, the way God speaks to me. I've had an episode about Hearing from God. I believe it's episode 14 if you want to go back and watch it on Facebook or on YouTube. But God listened to me and to Tanya and brought us back together. He will listen to you. And he will tell you. But we have to listen to God. Okay? And I can tell you this right now. If Antonio Brown and the Pittsburgh Steelers were a marriage covenant, God would not have told Antonio Brown, go see what the Raiders or the Patriots have in mind for you. Okay? God's not going to tell you to leave your spouse. Okay, some people will say, unless it's for adultery reasons. God may say that because that's in the Bible. God doesn't want you to be physically abused. Okay? I know that. But at the same time, you can be away from your spouse and not break the marriage covenant. I'm telling you, I can't tell you what to do. You've got to go to God. If you're being abused, get away from the abuser, okay? But remember that with God, there is no end. God can restore and redeem and rebuild anyone and anything. He has done it before. He can do it again. I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you how long to wait. I can just tell you what the power of God is. And the power of God is restoration. The power of God is freedom. The power of God is joy, happiness, strength, salvation, redemption. The power of God is many things. And we can find it for ourselves. So, whether you've been married 30 years and you just can't stand your husband anymore, or you've been married 5 years and you want to leave your wife, or if you've been married just a year and you think, why did I ever do this? Go to God. Because here's what happened. I use this example a lot when I would marry people. And I don't have a picture to show you, so I'm going to use a picture with my hand. This is you down here, okay? This is your spouse over here. You're on my right thumb. Your spouse is on your future spouse, or your current spouse is on your my left thumb. They come together. They have a relationship. This is God up here, where the two index fingers come together. That's God. You see, that makes a triangle, right? A triangle. Now, there's a relationship here, but there's also a relationship here between God and your spouse, between you and God, between you and God. There's a relationship. So there's two different relationships between God and the other person, and down on the bottom, a relationship between one another. A triangle, 3 points. You've probably heard this analogy before of braid. When someone braids their hair, you only see 2 strands. But without that third strand, you cannot make a braid. You can't take, oh my gosh, I can't even braid my hair. What am I talking about? But I couldn't take my hair if it was long enough and to pull out 2 strands and tie it together and make a braid. It's not going to look right, and it's not going to stay together. You need that third strand to mix it in between. You know how you crisscross when you're braiding. The third strand is what makes it strong. That's what makes you strong. This relationship is made stronger because of God in the middle. Now, when your marriage turns upside down, look at that. It's still a triangle. You take something that is a triangle and you set it down on the point, it's going to flip to one side or the other. And when your marriage gets turned upside down, sometimes one spouse will pull the other to the other side. So much to the point where this relationship starts to break. But notice there's still a point at the bottom. That means that God can push that back together and flip it back up the right way. You can't break that point. You're not going to break God. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what you think. You're not going to break God. You can even try to break your relationship with God. You're not going to break God. So when this happens and it pulls apart, God can pull it back together every time. Okay? Don't tell me you're too far gone. Don't tell me he's all this and all that and all the things. I've heard the excuses, okay? I've counseled people who've wanted to get a divorce. I've heard the excuses. I've used some of those excuses. You're not going to tell me anything new, okay? I'm telling you that if you're teetering, like this maybe, or if you're still like this and you're starting to maybe turn upside down, God can help you. God established marriage as a symbol of that relationship between him and you through Jesus Christ. You and Jesus, Jesus and God, you and God. That's what it symbolizes. We are the bride of Christ. He is our bridegroom. We will live with him forever. It's a covenant established by him for our salvation. And we mimic it in our lives when a man and a woman come together to become one. One. Tell me, you who has been married for 35 years, do you answer your husband's sentences? To the couple that's been married 25 years, do you feel the pain when the other person's not with you, the longing to be with them? You who have been married for 10 years, are you loving it? You feeling the connection? You feeling it get stronger? You feeling the intimacy? You who have been married for just 5 years, do you still have the love you had when you first got married? They say the first 5 years are the most difficult. I believe it. You still feeling it? It's going to get stronger. You're going to love it if you keep this in place. The relationship between you and God, your spouse and God. So what do we do when we have this? I guess it'd be like this. This person's over here. Yeah, here I am. But there's no, that's what I'm looking for. Like that. What do you do then? Paul told us about this in the Bible. He said, don't be unequally yoked. Okay? If you have two oxen and one is stronger than the other, they're not equally yoked. The one who's stronger is going to pull and you're going to have a curved plow. Okay? He was concerned about Israel's history. Solomon and all his wives pulled him away from God. And God split the kingdom because of that. Okay? Without getting into a whole lot of detail, what do you do if you're in a situation like that? Or you fall in love with someone, but he's an atheist. Doesn't believe in God at all. So you got this. No God. Well, guess what? He's still there. Yeah. You're not going to break God. You're not going to chase God away. God is still there. You still have this. You think you have this. This is there. It's just that this person's not recognizing it yet. Okay? When you get married, this is always there. It's there. Okay? It may look like this, but it's this. Okay? Pray for your husband or your wife who is straying from God, doesn't believe in God, doesn't know what to believe about God. I know a couple, I'm not going to divulge their names. They had, I would say, maybe something like this, I believe in God, but I don't really have that relationship. That's what they thought they had, okay? She prayed. He, one day, prayed too. Agnostic, I would say. I think that's what he would say too. Agnostic. I'm pretty sure that's what he referred to himself as. And if you're watching this, and you know who I'm talking about, and if you weren't agnostic, I apologize. But anyway, nobody else knows who you are. So anyway, he now is a pastor in a church, an ordained pastor at that. What seemed like this is now a very strong this. Now, they don't have the perfect marriage. They've had some of this. They might even have had this at times. But it never broke. But God's a gentleman, okay? We are not robots. We are autonomous. We make our own decisions. I believe it's 2 Corinthians, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial for me. You can do this. I mean, you can do this. I guess it would be like that. You can break that covenant, okay? God will let you do it. He'll forgive you. He'll still love you. But I promise you it's going to be painful. And you may think your marriage is painful. But I'm telling you that if you are starting to do this and you ask God to do this, your marriage is not going to be painful anymore. In your mind, it might be painful. You might have to remind yourself daily why you married that person, why you married him, why you married her. You might have to remind yourself. You might have to get in your car and take a drive for half an hour to get away, okay? There's no perfect marriage. But this God up at the point is the God who restores. When this starts to happen, he's the one who restores. When this starts to happen, he's the one with the thread that sews it back together. He can do it. I don't care what your circumstance is. He can do it. You got this? He can do it. He can do it. I'm telling you. God is amazing. I know that there are people watching who probably are still going to go through with that divorce. There are probably people watching who are still going to say, yeah, you don't know my husband. You're right. I don't. Okay. But I do want to say that I'm out of time. I do want to say, though, that you just don't realize how powerful God is. I'm asking you as a friend, as a pastor, as someone maybe you don't even know, I'm asking you, give God a chance. He'll show you amazing things. He will. Because he wants to. He wants this and this more than he wants this or this. Okay? Give God a chance. Thank you all for watching tonight. You've been a wonderful, lovely audience. I really enjoyed doing this. If you would, pray for me as I continue to listen to God and see how's this show evolving? What changes are needing to be done? Do I keep the tree? Do I keep the comfy chairs? No, I mean, I haven't had any interviews for a while, but I believe God's been telling me, no, Phil, you're doing this. I've had people lined up, and it's like God says to me, no, Phil, you got to do this one on your own. So we're seeing where it goes. I'm following God. I just pray that you will pray for me to help me understand and know where to go. All right? I will see you next week as we get together again at the table.